All right, hello again, everybody. Tonight we're going to talk about how to divide fractions. Specifically, we're going to use word problems to help us gather more of a context for when and how we might divide fractions. So our first example says a baker is making cakes for a big party, and she's using 1/4 a cup of oil for each cake. How many cakes can she make if she has a bottle of oil that has 6 cups in it? Now, a lot of times I've seen students who see the first number and then the second number and they think, well, that must be the order that it goes in. So a lot of students would automatically say 1/4 divided by 6. But let's think about the context of this problem and even draw the picture to go with it. If we've got a bottle of oil, now you're going to have to forgive my awful handwriting. So this is our bottle of oil. And that bottle of oil has 6 cups in it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's the lid is at the top. So there's 6 sections here for 6 cups. And we are taking each of these cups and splitting it into fourths. Because each of these 1/4 cups is going to make for us 1 cake. And what we want to know in the end is how many cakes can we make given 1 bottle. So if this 1 cup down here makes 4 cakes, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and there are 6 of those cups, then that's going to end up being 6 times 4, which is 24 cups. Okay? So this is 6 times 4, which is 24. Okay? To put it into a division problem, though, to think about it, using just the numbers we were given, 6 is being divided up into 1/4 cup sections. So 6 divided by 1/4, we're going to change this first into an improper fraction. Then we're going to keep the first fraction, we're going to change the sign, and we're going to flip our second fraction. So now it becomes 6/1 times 4/1, which gives us 6 times 4 is 24/1, which is 24 cakes. Okay, so now let's try another problem. Mrs. Murphy's class is making pillowcases, and each pillowcase uses 3/4 of a yard of fabric. And we want to know how many cases they can make out of 12.5 yards of fabric. So again, the second number is really the number that is our dividend, because we've got 12.5 yards of fabric, okay, and that's being split up into sections that are 3/4 of a yard in size. So we're going to end up doing 12.5 divided by 3/4. Now let's not forget we keep, change, and then flip. So we'll keep our first fraction, but we are going to change it into an improper fraction. So 12.5 is going to get multiplied. So our whole number gets multiplied by our denominator, and then we're going to add our numerator. So we get 12 times 2, which is 24, plus 1 is 25 over 2. We're going to change our sign, and then we're going to flip our second fraction to 4/3. Now when we multiply across, 25 times 4 is 100, and 2 times 3 is 6. So now we're really going to need to simplify this. And to simplify, let's just make sure that we're doing our math correctly by doing some long division over here to see how we're going to turn this into an improper fraction. So let's see how many times 6 goes into 100, or how many times 6 goes into 10, really, which is once. 6 times 1 is just 6. That gives me 4. If I bring down that 0, 6 goes into 40 6 times. I'm going to have to expand this, put my decimal there. 6 times 6 is 36. And again, I get a 4. That becomes 40. And now I can kind of see that this is going to keep going on and on for a while. So I'll write my improper fraction here. Over here I had 16 as my whole number. My denominator is still the same with 6. And my remainder, when I was done with my initial division, was 4. So this becomes 16 and 4/6. Or we will say 16 and 2/3. Okay, and now for our last problem. Mark drove for half of the trip, and Justin drove for 1/4 of the trip. Gina and Caitlin divided the rest of the driving evenly between them. If the entire trip was 128 miles, how many miles did Caitlin drive? Alright, so half of the trip was Mark. So 1/2 of the total distance, which is 128. Justin drove 1/4 of the total distance, which is also 128. And then we now need to figure out Gina and Caitlin. So, in order to figure out half of 128, you guys may recognize this word here that we said was our special keyword for multiplication. 1/2 of 128 implies that we need to multiply 1/2 by 128. Now when we do that, we're going to end up multiplying across the top to get 128 over 2, and 128 divided by 2 is going to give us 64. So Mark drove 64 miles. Justin, on the other hand, drove 1/4 of 128. Again, that implies multiplication. So we're going to turn that into an improper fraction, multiply across the top and the bottom. 128 divided by 4 is going to give us 32 miles. And the rest is going to belong to Caitlin and Gina. So, if we look at this, well, 64 miles plus 32 miles.
Yeah, that's the problem with summers. It's just I didn't have the staff in town to do modules. I had 12
Is going to give us 98. And now if we do, whoop, that's 96. 96 miles, my bad. Now if we do 128 minus 96, we are going to get 32. So 32 miles split between Gina and Caitlin evenly, as this problem says up top, evenly. Then 32 divided by 2 is going to give us 16. So Gina drove 16 miles, and Caitlin also drove 16 miles. Now before I let you all go, I do want to look at another way that we could approach this problem. So we know that Mark and Justin drove 1/4 of the trip and 1/2 of the trip. And we know Gina and Caitlin drove some other amount. And all together, this is going to give us the whole trip. One entire trip, which is just 1. So if we add these together, we're going to, first of all, change these so that we've got like denominators. So I'm going to write this as 2 over 4. And that's going to give me 3/4. So 3/4 of the trip between Mark and Justin, plus the remaining fraction, whatever that is, has to give me 1. So we need to figure out what fraction out of 4 would give me 4/4. And that, of course, is going to have to be 1. In other words, Caitlin and Gina total split 1/4 of the drive between the two of them. So 1/4 divided by 2. This is going to have to be the same as 1/4 times 1/2. Now that we've kept our first fraction, changed our sign, and flipped our second fraction. And we're left with 1/8. So 1/8 of the total trip was Gina's, and 1/8 of the trip was Caitlin's. Now we can figure out how many miles, because we need to go back to answering the exact question we were given. The number of miles is 1/8 of the total trip. 1/8 of 128 miles. We'll change that to an improper fraction. If we multiply across the top, we've got 128 over 8. Let's do our long division to make sure we're doing our math correctly. 8 goes into 12 once. 1 times 8 is 8. 12 minus 8 is 4. Let's bring down that 8. 8 goes into 48 6 times exactly. 6 times 8 being 48 will leave us a remainder of 0. So that means that each Gina and Caitlin drove 16 miles. And that's going to conclude our video for this evening. I hope you guys had a good time taking your notes. Have an awesome weekend, and I will see you all on Monday.